Missing person cases are often filled with strange and bizarre details that keep investigators guessing. Sometimes these cases have happy endings and are solved with shocking twists that you could have never expected. Number 5. In 1954, Lucy Ann Carvel married Marvin Johnson, taking on his surname. Lucy was excited about what the future held for her as a newlywed, but in 1961, she mysteriously disappeared. It wasn't until decades later that her missing person case was finally solved with a shocking twist. After getting married, the Johnsons moved to Surrey, British Columbia, and began starting a life together. Lucy had been born in Skagway, Alaska, and had lived in the Yukon and other cities across Alaska and Canada, so she was happy to settle down somewhere and put down some roots. The two welcomed a son, Daniel, and a daughter, Linda, into the world, and to the outside world, everything for the Johnsons was going well. However, behind closed doors, it was a very different story. The last known sighting of Lucy was sometime in September of 1961, at her home on 145A Street in Surrey, British Columbia. Lucy was unknowingly seen by a neighbor for the last time before she dropped off the face of the earth. It wasn't until 4 years later that her husband finally reported her missing, and a missing person case was opened. The Surrey police immediately turned their suspicions to Lucy's husband, Marvin. But without any evidence, the case quickly ran cold. While Marvin did everything in his power to let Lucy's memory fizzle out, her children never gave up hope that one day they would be reunited with their beloved mother. In 2013, Linda Johnson got her wish after the RCMP reopened her mother's case. Incredibly, Lucy received an email from a woman in Whitehorse who told her that her brother had seen the advertisement and had recognized the woman in the photograph as their mother, Lucy Ann Johnson. This tip was passed on to the RCMP, who confirmed that the woman in the Yukon was in fact Lucy Ann Johnson, who had been missing since 1961. Lucy told the RCMP that she'd fled her marriage as her husband Marvin was cruel towards her, and she'd tried to take Linda and Daniel, but he wouldn't let her. Linda and Lucy reunited in late 2013 in Whitehorse, Yukon. Linda also had to break the news to her mother that Daniel had passed away many years ago when he was just 20 years old. Number 4. For 42 years, Tammy Miller wondered what had happened to her mother, Lula Gillespie Miller, who was last seen in 1974. According to records, Lula handed over the care of her 4 children to her parents, telling them that she was too young to be a mother. After this, she disappeared into thin air, causing her family to open a missing person case. November 1st, 1974 was the last date that Lula was officially seen, and it wasn't until 1975 that her parents in Laurel, Indiana received a letter from her that was postmarked Richmond, Indiana. The contents of this letter have never been revealed, but according to Lula's mother, this was the last contact from her daughter. The Millers tried to get on with their lives the best they could, and Tammy credits her grandmother for the amazing upbringing she had. As the years passed, Lula's family never forgot about her, but with no phone number and no forward address, they didn't know where to start looking for her. Fast forward 42 years later to 2016, and Tammy received a call that changed her life. In 2014, the Indiana State Police had reached out to the Doe Network and asked for their assistance in Lula's case. The Indiana State Police believed that Lula may be a Jane Doe and worked closely with the Doe Network to re-examine her case. Then, in 2016, the Indiana State Police, along with the Texas Rangers, discovered that Lula Gillespie Miller was alive and well and living in Texas. Texas Rangers went to her address and questioned her, where she admitted that she was the missing Lula Gillespie Miller from Laurel, Indiana. Tammy attempted to reunite and reconcile with her mother, who now lives under a different name that has been withheld at her request. But the reunion was anything but happy. Tammy told People.com that she only spoke on the phone with her mother for 2 minutes before Lula said that she had to go and that she would call her back. Number 3. 26-year-old Carlos de Salazar was a promising young doctor who spoke several languages and had obtained a degree in psychology. The future was bright for Carlos, and both Carlos and those who knew him wondered what he was going to do next. Unfortunately, nobody could have predicted that his next move would be to disappear mysteriously, leaving a bizarre cold case in his wake. In 1995, Carlos walked out of his home in Spain for what would be the last time. He turned his back on society and headed out into the wilderness, wanting to live a solitary, hermit lifestyle. His family was devastated when they realized that he had gone missing, and despite a missing person report being filed, nothing much came of it. For years, his family kept looking for him, hoping that they would be reunited. Shortly after Carlos's disappearance, his family found out that he'd been suffering from severe depression, but hoped that he would come back when he was ready. In 2015, the de Salazar family got the shock of a lifetime when they received a call from a Spanish missing persons charity who told them that their son had been found alive and well. It turns out that for the last 20 years, Carlos had been living in a nature reserve in Italy. Mushroom pickers accidentally stumbled across his camp, and after assuring Carlos that they were no threat to him, he revealed that he was missing Carlos de Salazar. His family were overjoyed to learn that Carlos had survived for all these years and was alive and well, but unfortunately a reunion was not in the cards. By the time his parents were informed of him being found and had flown out to Italy to meet him, he had already disappeared again, making it very clear he didn't want to be found. Number 2. 25-year-old Timothy Carney of Elizabeth, New Jersey, had recently graduated from Montclair State University and was working at the Department of Labor. During his time at college as an English major, Timothy became involved with the Christian Church Gospel Outreach, and as the years passed, he became more and more devoted to the group. Timothy found a place where he felt comfortable and like he belonged, and his devotion only continued to grow after he left university. After getting his degree, Timothy moved in with a roommate who was also a member of the church, and he spent his time between work and church. Friends and family became concerned about Timothy after they learned that he was giving the church most of his wages and would often have to rely on borrowing money from coworkers in order to get food on his lunch breaks. Despite his family's concerns, Timothy stayed with the church, and then in September of 2004, the unthinkable happened. On September 28th at around 5 a.m., Timothy left his apartment in Elizabeth, New Jersey and was never seen again. On that morning, he called his manager to let him know that he would be slightly late, but never showed up for his shift. This was extremely out of character for Timothy, and his friends and family knew something was wrong when the church reported that he'd failed to show up to that morning's prayer session, something that he never missed. His family immediately suspected that the Christian Gospel Outreach had something to do with his disappearance. They waited, hoping that he would return soon, but after finding his abandoned car on October 7th, they knew that the outlook was bleak. His car had been abandoned near a construction site, and he had left all of his personal belongings behind. Following his disappearance, his parents worked with the police and organizations to help track down their son. During the missing person investigation, the police uncovered CCTV footage of a man withdrawing $1,000 from Timothy's bank account in the days after he disappeared. Unfortunately, the man was wearing a hat, and it was never confirmed whether the man captured in the CCTV footage was Timothy or somebody else. For years, Timothy's family continued looking for him, and then in 2011, his case was hit with a shocking twist. His family received a call from the local police department stating that their son had been found alive and well. His family believed that the church was behind his disappearance, and the group has been accused of cult-like activities. Number 1. In May of 1977, Harold Lavelle walked out of the front door of his Cook County, Illinois home for what would be the last time. He told his parents that he was going to a construction job, but never returned. When he failed to return home, his parents became worried about him, and their concerns were made worse when years later, they saw a composite sketch of one of John Wayne Gacy's victims that bore a striking resemblance to Harold. After reaching out to the police involved in Gacy's arrest and the identification of his victims, Harold's mother, Kathy, identified a piece of jewelry found at Gacy's home as belonging to her son. With the possibility that Harold was one of Gacy's victims, his family applied for DNA testing to be carried out on the remains found at Gacy's home. Unfortunately, none of the remains were a match. But in 2011, his family received another surprise. The Cook County Sheriff's Office began searching through records while investigating Harold's disappearance and his possible connection to Gacy. That's when they stumbled across the arrest record of 53-year-old Harold Wayne Lavelle, who was living in Florida. Harold had picked up charges over the years, and when his family was shown his booking photo, they instantly knew that this was him. Bizarrely, Harold had actually crossed paths with Gacy in Chicago. Harold also told investigators that he left Illinois and headed for Florida, as he felt that he was unwanted by his mother and stepmother. For 34 years, Harold had moved around Florida, picking up work wherever he could. He's since been reunited with his family. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.